welcome to my channel Cranberry Landers, where my friends and I will be talking about comic books, comic history, character evaluations, theories, and a bunch of other geeky subjects. So if you like the sound of that, I hope you stick around.
Hi, welcome to my channel, Cranberry Landers, and this is my brother.
Hey, I'm Tobiah, also known as the Wilhelm Scream on YouTube.
Yes, that's right. He just started a Twitter account, so if you like his content, if you want to get more of his comments and more things from him, you can check him out on that channel or go to his Twitter as well.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about Moon Knight from Marvel Comics. Moon Knight just started as he just got a new show on Disney Plus, which is really great. I have a good familiarity with the character. We'll be talking about his history, some of the abilities and characteristics of Moon Knight, and some of the runs of Moon Knight, and we'll also be talking about the show and our opinions on the show and what we think might be in the future for the show. So if you like that, I hope you stick around, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you wish. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about is Moon Knight is a man. His name is Mark Spector. So Moon Knight has several aliases. He has Mark Spector, Stephen Grant, and Jake Lockley. And the character first starts out as a mercenary, and where you're introduced to him, his origin story is he is in Egypt, and he works as a mercenary. And the first introduction, you see him, and he's out there. There's some archaeologists around, and one of his fellow mercenaries, the Bushman, he starts to kill and attack the people that they're with. And Mark Spector has a crisis of conscience. He can't stand what they're doing, and so he attempts to stop him. In the fight, he gets attacked by the Bushman, and he almost dies. And in that, he struggles to get away. He loses the fight. He struggles to get away from Bushman, and he ends up at the feet of the statue Khonshu, the statue of Khonshu.
Mortally wounded.
Yes, mortally wounded, and he's about to die, and he gives himself over to Khonshu at that time, and in exchange for living. And Khonshu is the god of the moon, or I think in the current and in some of the previous iterations, he's also known as a god of vengeance. And Moon Knight is known as the Knight of Vengeance. But yeah, so he gives himself over there, and what he does is he decides to give up being a mercenary as such, and he takes his earnings from being a mercenary and he puts it into the stock. And he actually gets millions of dollars from his stock purchases and from his stock, from his trading, and he decides to put that money into being a vigilante and protecting those. He feels he's called by Khonshu to go out and to seek to avenge people and to help people who are weaker, against the strong. So he fights for those people, and so he has several jobs. So he's a cabbie. He's worked as a cabbie. He's been a mercenary. He's been a vigilante, and he's also been a millionaire. And so you'll be seeing some of that. Moon Knight has a moon motif. At one time he had, I think it's a symbol of Horus, but it's kind of it's kind of a cross, but it has a loop at the top. And he had that symbol for a time. He currently has a moon symbol on his chest, but that is symbolic where he gets his powers from. But he changed that, and he has moon-themed fighting implements and other things. So he has several abilities, and he has several weapons and forms of equipment. His uniform. What he's mainly known for is he has a hood. It's a white hood. He's all in white, depending on the run that he's in. But he's all in white, and he has a white mask, and he also has it's a full face mask, and he also has a white suit, predominantly white suit, and he also has a cape that's shaped as a crescent moon. He also has some moon discs. They're like blades. They're kind of like the batarangs of Batman, so they're moon themed. And he uses those to cut. Sometimes he'll stick these moon discs or these moon kind of like batarangs. These moon knives, he'll stick them in his fist, and he'll use them as claws, so like Wolverine's claws, and he'll use those to cut into people and hurt people very badly.
Brutal.
And he's very good at that. He also has a grappling hook, so he has some batons that he uses. So he'll use them as batons. He can also use them as grappling hooks, so they can extend and they can form a bow staff, or they can form a grappling hook, and he'll use those in his fighting as well. But in addition to that, through his relation with the moon god Khonshu, he also has some abilities and powers. So he's an Olympic level athlete, and he has great agility, and he has great strength. I think he can bench like around 450 pounds. That's his normal. That's his base level.
Just his base level.
His base level. And he goes out and he uses his gadgets and stuff. He uses his gadgets and his fighting techniques. He also is a master of I think a couple forms. He's a master of a couple forms of martial arts, but he uses that in his street crime, his way of dealing with the criminal scum of the
criminal element.
The criminal element of his neighborhood. And in addition to that, because of his relationship with Khonshu grants him some powers. With that comes increased agility, the ability to recuperate from very grave injuries, and also increased strength and increased durability. And he also has an immense amount of pain tolerance. It's unclear to me whether the pain tolerance is a gift from Khonshu, or if it's just the fact that Moon Knight gets so injured so catastrophically so often that he fights through the pain, and he can deal with immense amounts of pain without stopping, where someone normally would.
Kind of the same idea with Wolverine, when obviously he has a healing factor, so the tissue comes back together, but you also know he feels it every time, and eventually he gets used to that level of damage and pain, and so he can still just be like, oh yeah, I lost my face, I'm still fighting. Oh yeah, parts of my blasting off, I'm still fighting, it doesn't matter. Partially adrenaline, partially rage, and then partially just immense amount of will. So.
Yeah, and he does have a healing factor. It's not as powered up. It's not as incredible as Wolverine. I know he's talking about the pain tolerance, and yes, he does have a similar. I would say it's similar. He can fight through the pain just as much as Logan can.
I would say it's probably relatively on par as like Spider-Man's.
Oh, healing?
Yeah, as far as healing ability.
Yeah. And then his super strength. So this is the thing with Khonshu. With the powers that Khonshu grants, Mark Spector's strength actually, and his abilities, his agility, his healing, and everything, it actually wanes and waxes with the moon. So when he has less of a moon, or when the moon is not visible, he has no powers. He has no powers at all. The only powers he has would be able to speak to Khonshu and be able to hear Khonshu, which he can do pretty much all the time, unless he's having an issue with Khonshu. He can usually hear him, and
he's still formidable, obviously at base level.
Right.
Immensely strong, very has high agility, and is able to take down tons of people with multiple different forms of martial arts, etc.
And his gadgets.
And his gadgets, but he has very limited ability compared to that. Versus when the moon is in full, or getting larger, when it's
the full moon.
Waxing,
yeah,
getting larger, then you have kind of the antithesis to that. He's becoming super strong, has insane abilities, is crazy fast, crazy strong, basically becomes literally superhuman.
Well, he is superhuman. So he actually does attain superhuman strength. Right now, I know he has a belt, but he can usually lift like about a ton. With a belt, he can lift about the belt of Khonshu. He can lift about 2 tons now. But he has incredible strength, and that does wane. He does get stronger with the more of the presence of the moon, and when the moon decreases, he has less powers. But when he doesn't have these powers available to him, he relies more on his gadgets and his fighting technique, everything else, and even his moon copter, which he has, or at least had in the comics.
Which to me, every time I've ever seen it, it just looks like a crescent moon from above. Amazing silhouette. Looks really, really cool, but does not say copter to me in any way. It looks like a bat plane, practically.
Yeah. It's if you view it from the side, it looks like a crescent moon.
Right.
And then if you view it from the top, I guess it does also look like a crescent moon.
Well, the only time I've ever seen it is them showing it from below, and it always looks like a crescent moon. I've never gotten to see it from like the side where it's supposed to be on the side. But apparently in the other versions they've shown him having it look more crescent-like.
Yeah, I'll show you. If I haven't already, I'll put a little image of his moon copter in there, which I think is cool. They should include that in the show, by the way. So he has these abilities. So when he doesn't have his superpowers, he relies on his own strength, his own abilities, and his own gadgets, his own equipment, and money. And then when he doesn't have that, he relies more on the mythical power set that he has, the spiritual aspects. So we're going to be talking about our familiarity with the character, where we got first introduced to Moon Knight, and what we like about him.
Which, honestly, my introduction was kind of through Andrew in the first place. I got to borrow the 2006 Moon Knight reboot that they did that has insanely beautiful artwork. The writer is Charlie Houston, and is very well written. I really love that version of the character. It's really, really cool, especially having only seen him briefly in like minor things outside of that. I saw him on like one Spider-Man game and Web of Shadows, fantastic Spider-Man game. And then apart from that, you see him in bit parts around the Avengers or other like heroes around like Hell's Kitchen, Daredevil, that kind of stuff. But even then, for some reason, it always felt really weird to see him, like, because they never go into it, and they almost act like he's not there in a way, in the way that it's written. But in the 2006 Moon Knight run, the art by David Finch is insane. It's really, really beautiful. Some of the fantastic layouts, the value and shading looks super cool, really clean. I've read some of his other stuff on Avengers, and I really liked that, but by far, I think my favorite version of his art is by how he shows Moon Knight at night, the gritty realism and everything. So good. But again, that was just how I was introduced into it. Apart from that, how were you really brought into the Moon Knight fold?
Well, my first introduction to Moon Knight was I used to have the Marvel, I think it's a handbook, Marvel Universe Handbook.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like an encyclopedia of most Marvel characters, Marvel superheroes, Marvel villains, and some side characters, and what their power sets are, their origins, their physical look, and their abilities and everything. So I really loved that book. I loved to pour through it, and that's where I first got introduced to Moon Knight, and I thought, he's a cool character. It's basically Batman, but he also has a twist where he has these supernatural abilities that he has to cope with, and he also has these. He also has the equipment and everything, and his fighting techniques that he's gotten through hard work and through those ways of having power and being able to fight people. So I actually liked both of those, and how those play. And yeah, so I was introduced to him through that, and then the series that my brother was talking about, the Wilhelm Scream, which you can check out on YouTube. That one, that that run, I really loved, and just like my brother said, the shading, and I think it's David Finch. David Finch, you said? David Finch, the artist, he does really good fabrics, and I just love that run. It was so beautiful. I thought it was fantastic. The brutality of Moon Knight, because he's actually willing to kill people, which is different from many of the heroes that are in the Marvel Universe. He's actually willing to kill, except for, Logan.
As far back as I can remember, it was one of the most brutal comics I've ever read.
Yeah.
At that age. I think I read it when I was like 10, 11. And I remember it being just insanely brutal, beautifully done, but hard to look at. Lasts with you, you really suck in that memory.
Burned.
Yeah, burned in there. But it's fantastic art. The way that they depict the character also I found really interesting, because to me it makes it feel very real world. A lot of the more fantastical elements are still there, but something that I really like about it is how they kind of leave it a little ambiguous early on, to where you know that he believes in the god of Khonshu, and that he's been brought back and he has these abilities, etc. But also you find out that he has, instead of alternate aliases, being it Stephen Grant and Jake Lockley, you find out that it's actually multiple personality disorder. And since this run, they've been really leaning into that, into his stories, which in one part, I understand they want to delineate him from Batman. They want it to be a little bit more interesting and that kind of thing. But to me, the thing that I really liked about it is, having not known much about the character previously, since he'd been around since the 70s, finding out that he did have multiple personalities, I did kind of latch onto that and was like, oh, that's a very interesting twist, a turn.
He didn't, by the way. Originally, he did not have multiple personalities.
Right.
It's just aliases. Anyways, continue.
But the aspects of him having multiple personalities I found really interesting, because it showed that he was going through psychotic breaks. He wasn't a reliable narrator for his story. And so you were going, oh, is he actually powered up by this ancient Egyptian god? Is it actual Marvel storytelling? Or is this guy just kind of a nut job and he's having to deal with it? And he has kind of abilities, mostly based on mind over matter, or is it something else? And so that's what I really enjoyed about the actual run, was that they keep it ambiguous. A lot of the side characters are kind of just like, no, you're kind of just a jerk and you're not great at what you do. We've always thought you were nuts. You dress up in all white so people can see you coming. That's not a normal thing to do when you're fighting crime. It was really well written and really interesting, and a really cool introduction to the character, especially being put in his world, where you're not sure if he's snapping or if he's actually going to be an actual hero who has these immense abilities and tons of money, etc., like a superhuman Batman, or is it just a person who should be in a straitjacket, but they're fighting crime instead?
Yeah, I actually hated the introduction of the multiple personalities thing. It was not an issue for him. He just had aliases. It was just like Batman had, like Bruce Wayne has aliases. I think what is his name? Smokes?
Matches Malone.
Matches Malone. There we go. Matches Malone. Yeah, he has alter egos so that he can do stuff. Because he's a mercenary. You have to be able to do stuff with an alter ego. You have to be able to do stuff with another name so that people don't know who you are. So it just made sense. It was part of his character. And then they introduced, that was one of the things I hated the most about the 2006 run. They introduced this psychosis, and is it clear? Is it in my head? Or am I actually talking to Khonshu and everything? They originally wrote it that he thought he talked and heard from Khonshu, but they made it pretty apparent in the original Marvel comics that he actually had talked to this god Khonshu. Whatever Khonshu is at the time, it could be an alien, could be a spirit or whatever. But Khonshu, he talked to Khonshu, a being identifying itself as Khonshu, saying that he wants vengeance, it's the god of the moon.
Imbued him with power and saved his life.
Anyway, so So in the 2006 run, he doesn't really have the power set, so you're not really sure about that. But they also introduced some other things that I really hated about it. Like they made his helicopter pilot, Frenchie, gay and stuff. I if the character was gay at the beginning, fantastic. But he wasn't. There's another thing Marvel did where they introduced an aspect of a character that wasn't there from the get-go, like the multiple personality disorders,
Which
they introduced.
I had no idea.
Which they introduced to the character. Right.
When it happened, I had no clue, and I just considered it, all right, well, I guess they're just doing this right now. All right, fine. The cool thing, though, that I thought about with him potentially not having powers, they also talk about the fact that he's kind of on the outs with Khonshu. He's not in good standing with Khonshu and has betrayed Khonshu in a way.
Yes.
And because of that, the argument is either, oh, I've betrayed Khonshu and I'm no longer in his good graces, I no longer am getting his blessing, or I've never had it, I'm crazy, and I am now damaged and hurt because of my fact that I'm actually just losing my mind and body can't handle it.
Yes. I understand that. It was a very good point. It actually spoke to me quite a bit because that's similar to what I've been going through with my relationship with God. Because some stuff that I'll not discuss that involves things that aren't natural have happened, but when people find it hard to never mind. When people find it hard to acknowledge or see some things, like they're So some things have happened. So I really identified with that story. It really spoke to me. I found it really interesting. And but I really did like the story as a whole. I just felt that they didn't have to break the character, and they didn't have to break the canon. They didn't have to reintroduce aspects of other characters that have existed for 20, 30 years plus. They didn't have to do that in order to make an interesting story. But apparently they thought that it was necessary.
But as far as making an interesting story, that's the other thing, is that they never really showed Moon Knight to be as brutal as he is in the 2006 run. He was very much kind of a stereotypical hero, punch the bad guys, knock out the Nazis, etc. But instead, he you can see the playing up of he's potentially going psychotic in his actions, especially when it comes to in regards to how he beats villains.
Or you could say, conversely, that what he's doing is he knows it looks crazy, he knows it's going to leave an imprint, and he knows that people are going to interpret it as a crazy man or he has powers or whatever. And so he's playing it up because he knows that will get stuck in their heads, and he knows that'll make him more frightening, it'll make him more imposing, especially as he's wearing a target everywhere he goes, being all dressed in white and everything. What kind of crazy man would dress all in white and go out and be around people who are aiming for you, trying to stab you and shoot you?
Yeah, it's a really, really useful fear tactic. And at one point, he is fighting Bushman, the character who actually shot him, mortally wounding him in the origin that creates the Moon Knight character.
Yeah.
And you end up having him fight him again, and they have a knockout, drag-out fight. It's brutal, it's long.
One of my favorite scenes.
They're fighting on rooftops, they're hitting each other, scratching each other, like the suits,
stabbing each other.
Suits are falling apart, stabbing each other. You got moonerangs in people's faces and chests, you got all kinds of stuff. At one point, Mark Spector, Moon Knight, falls off of an entire building, smashing his way down on all of the scaffolding and everything, and eats it on the ground and breaks both of his legs.
Yes, he does.
It's insanely brutal to see because you're going into it like, oh, it's a Marvel story. We're going to see him do a flip and he'll land. Oh, he shoots his Moonerang grapple to be able to catch himself just in time. No, he breaks both of his legs. He's lying there, bleeding profusely, moaning for help. And then Bushman comes down, ready to do the final kill with a giant beefy knife. And what does he do instead?
What does he do instead?
He goes to try and murder Moon Knight and cut off his face. And Moon Knight, in retaliation, does the exact same thing. He stops him, knocks him to the ground, beats him unconscious, and then carves his face off.
With one of his little moon...
his crescent moonerangs.
Yeah, his moonerangs.
And then holds it up.
Yes, the guy is screaming, no, while he's getting his face peeled off. And then you see, and I'll put some images.
Oh, good.
I'll put some images up to show you what we're talking about here.
Oh, crap.
But he rips his face off. He peels it off with his moon rings, and you just hear the scritching of his blades, of his little knives.
Remember what I said about the brutality of the comic? It's in full glory here. Like, they don't pull any punches, literally. It ends up being a drop down, drag out fight that ends up ending with him killing Bushman and peeling his face off his skull.
Right, and as we know through many cultures, part of the trophy or a trophy that you get, or the to symbolize your victory and your victory over the other, you take the head, or you take the face,
or you take the scalp,
or the scalp,
the head off
part of the person. Or sometimes they'll do drawings, they'll do paintings of the loser's face, to show that you won. And so that's what he does. He literally takes the face off of the Bushman, and he had like a tattoo, like a full face tattoo. You can also see that.
Yeah, really cool, crazy, creepy look. Has like filed down teeth and stuff. Guy's super, super creepy.
Yeah.
But also you then feel really weird about Moon Knight, because you're like,
so you wonder if he is. You wonder at that point, of most things that you'd say this is a proof of his mental instability. You wonder, is he crazy right now? Because he's very happy. He's not very happy. He takes pride in the fact that he's won and everything. Later on, to further illustrate, no pun intended, the fact that he might very well be crazy is he's in his bathroom and he's looking into the mirror, and he puts Bushman's skin, he puts his face onto his face. He covers his own face with the Bushman's face in the mirror, and he stares at himself. When his ex-wife or girlfriend comes in and stares out in the mirror, and he turns around and she screams and freaks out about the fact that he's wearing someone's not disembodied, but someone's face on his face.
He's wearing a person's face, Hannibal Lecter style.
Skinned someone's face and placed it over his,
and
is staring at
not the norm.
No,
not something that a hero normally does.
That very much makes me question his sanity, or his state right there. Ugh. I myself, though, I have had some dark thoughts. I'll say I haven't ever gotten to the point of scanning someone's, scalping someone, tearing off someone's face.
It's creepy and psycho.
Yeah, but it's great. It's really great.
It makes you really understand and appreciate the fact that they're making this not a reliable narrator. He's not the main character. He's not the heroic character. He's a very flawed character, and you kind of get to ride along with the mystery of, are you nuts? How nuts are you? Are you actually blessed? Are you not blessed? And ultimately trying to kind of come to a norm for him. He's basically been incapacitated by breaking both of his legs.
His knees
multiple
make crunchy noises.
Yeah, crinkling, that kind of stuff. So he's in a horrible state. He's been drinking, doing lots of medications and stuff months later, and is no longer Moon Knight. He has a statue of Khonshu in his apartment that he has a cloth draped over, showing that he hasn't been in communication with Khonshu, hasn't been trying to have any kind of relapse into being Moon Knight. Basically, he's cut himself completely off and is just doing as much drugs and alcohol as he can, and has completely let himself go. His friends and family are there, and they're basically just telling him, like, hey, if you don't do something now, we're done. We're never going to come back. You're on your own. He ends up slowly working his way through it, becomes a much more relatable character because of it. You still are kind of like, you know that you have things wrong with you, but the character himself is still very, very interesting, and you get to see him kind of crawl his way back into normalcy and being able to be Moon Knight, being able to help his community and being able to help the people of New York as much as he can, spending all that money and being able to be the best Moon Knight possible. It's really, really cool. A very hardcore book, but really, really well written, very gritty. And the writer is actually, I believe, originally done a lot of like detective novels and stuff, and you can very much feel that noir pulp influences in the book, especially in tone. The art, like I said, like you said, is fantastic, really, really beautiful. Just insane level of detail, really cool shadow work and all that. Brutal, but beautiful at the same time. And I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's up to now, to date. I believe that this is one of the best Marvel storylines. I believe this is one of the best runs or the best stories that Marvel has put out yet. I know there are many good ones, but at least this one's very much a favorite for me. Despite the things that I disagree with, and despite the issues I have with them breaking parts of the character, I still believe that this is one of the best stories and one of the best runs I've read in Marvel.
Yeah.
So after that, they established that he has, which he never had before, but they established that he has multiple personality disorder. They established that he has like a schizophrenia. But after this came the 2014 run.
Oh, no,
the 2011 run
Yeah.
of Michael Bendis.
Right. Which I have read, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's definitely leaning more into the psychology and psychosis of Moon Knight and Mark Spector. Instead of him just having 3 personalities inhabiting of his aliases, he actually, as far as you can tell, he's completely having a psychotic break and actually believes himself to be, spoiler alert, the Avengers. He, especially the new Avengers that had just come out recently.
Spider-Man, Wolverine.
Captain America, and a couple others. But he basically, in lieu of having these different characters' abilities, he's using his technology and gadgets that he's been able to accrue to make facsimiles of them and use them in lieu of it. But he thinks that he's still all of their personalities at the same time. Except Mark Spector doesn't know all of their secret identities and stuff. So he's kind of like the hero persona only. He doesn't go, oh, I'm Spider-Man and I love Mary Jane. No, he doesn't talk about anything like that. But he does go, oh, I'm going to shoot my webs and make a quip. Ba, 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 and he shoots the webs. So he's kind of like the stereotypical versions of those characters because he's had so many interactions with those characters. So it's very interesting. You walk like a very fine line in the comic where you feel excited and you're like, oh man, this is really cool, really awesome, interesting fights and stuff, and him fighting crime and whatnot. It's really cool. But you also feel the other side of it where you're going, this is a broken man who's dealing with his issues in a very unhealthy way, and you kind of just feel for him throughout the entire comic. Ultimately, he kind of breaks himself from that and is able to, again, kind of find his way back into his level of normalcy. But the artwork is really cool, really interesting, beautifully drawn. The writing is rock solid, and then I actually really enjoyed it, even though I'm not a huge fan of Bendis' other work. Usually they're decent, but I really enjoyed that run when I did read it.
I hated the concept of the entire storyline, that entire run, 2011 Bendis. I dislike Bendis in most of his work. I can't stand the guy in his writing. I think he does a terrible disservice to the characters. Usually botches them in one or more of the key components of the characters. And I think he did the same thing with Moon Knight here. So he did a great job at further hurting one of the characters that already exist. That was kind of a favorite of mine. Anyway, so but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting, right? And I thought, oh, that might be cool what he's doing. But in the process of doing his cool story, he's also butchering a character. So, but yeah, I agree. The art looked good. Yeah.
Oh, that is true. Yeah. After the fact, once you've moved from there, a couple years later in 2014, you then have the Moon Knight run that introduced Mr. Knight.
Right. And his, yes.
Which Mr. Knight, I think, is an interesting new addition. Instead of his alter egos and his personas being of the civilian life, the Mark Spector, Stephen Grant, etc., you then have it be multiple personalities of the Moon Knight character. So instead of it being a story of like delving into the psychosis of like a Bruce Wayne, it's instead delving into the psychosis of multiple personalities for Batman. Only with it being Moon Knight, it's Moon Knight would be the heroic, cape-wearing, cowl-wearing, running around shooting my moonerangs and everything, and instead you have Mr. Knight, who is the alter ego who is
he's dressed in a suit,
dressed
full
in a
white mask.
Full white mask, full white suit, looks like he's wearing a tux practically, and the way that they introduce the character is really interesting. He has a cane, very much like a mobster kind of style. Especially reminds me of Kingpin or The Rose, which is also Kingpin's son.
Right.
Very, very cool, iconic looking outfit. Very stark white and really, really cool. I only got to delve into, and I think you also only got to read like one issue of it.
I read maybe 1-2 issues.
Yeah, and the one that I remember reading, it was still fairly brutal, but they moved a little bit farther from that. It's a little bit more palatable, a little bit more digestible for new readers.
Less gritty, less violent.
Less gritty, less violent.
Less blood.
But still fairly brutal, and shows Moon Knight as being a guy who is throwing himself into everything that he does. So as Mr. Knight, he's, in the comic that I read, he literally works his way down through an entire building, knocking out all these different thugs and goons that are trying to stop him while he's trying to get to a target. And eventually, he makes his way through, knocking out all these guys, and the panel work alone, I think, was really well done. It was beautiful panel design and felt very much like a storyboard, but not in a way where you feel like it's cheapening the comic style. It still kind of just amplifies both. It was really, really good, but I did kind of fall off of it for a little while. And now I know that they've been doing tons and tons of changes to the character, but
one of the things that they did that again, I disagree with the choice of leaning into psychosis. I disagree with the fact that they chose it, but if they had introduced this character component, if they had introduced this concept with the character at the beginning, at the outset of the creation of the character, I wouldn't have had a problem. And actually, I do think that this gimmick is very interesting. It's very cool. Yeah. I actually prefer the Mr. Knight character, the guy in the white full mask and the suit. I actually like it. Another thing about the characters is that Mr. Knight is more, he's more planning. He's more technical. He's more cerebral in how he fights he fights his opponents.
You do feel that he's much more strategic in comparison to regular Moon Knight, who's kind of just jumping into a situation. You see that this guy is a little more calculating when he does stuff.
Yeah, he does. And another thing that you see is that they actually speak to each other. They communicate and they plan how they do attacks. So they cooperate between each other, these personalities within Mark Spector's head.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. That's a great, interesting concept. I disagree, but I do think it's a fantastic storyline. I did not continue reading it for the fact that I disagreed with how they were going. And it's similar with other stories. But they do have that. They have Mr. Knight, they have Moon Knight, and they also have another character that they introduce And I believe they leave it ambiguous as to whether Khonshu himself is actually a construction in Mark Spector's in his mind.
Okay. It's an alternate personality of Khonshu as well?
Yes, I believe so, and yes, and I believe that they might actually introduce another one. So it's like a few. So it could be 4 of them in total. But I didn't read the series, okay? But I think it's at least 3, and one of them being Moon Knight, one of them being Mr. Knight, and then there's a third one, possibly a 4th if you count Khonshu.
And I know that basically since the 2006 comics, they've been leaning heavily into his psychosis. They've been wanting it to be very much the...
Right.
They want him to be shown as a broken individual, someone who you can't completely trust, who he can't even trust himself, and you're kind of down the rabbit hole with this character. And to me, I think that's very interesting, especially seeing a hero, because you're seeing someone who's still trying to do as much positivity as he can, but at the same time, you can tell he has really big issues.
He does.
Beyond that, though, I think they've also taken huge impacts from that and brought it into the show.
Yes.
The new Disney Plus Moon Knight show that's come out recently, a lot of people have had very mixed feelings on it.
So what are your thoughts?
I actually really liked it.
I liked it.
I didn't think it was amazing. I still think some of the films have done way better stuff. I've even enjoyed some of the stuff from the Daredevil Netflix show a little bit more in how they show a character and personality. It's very short, which in a way is kind of nice. But as far as the overall show, I enjoyed it. What about you? What did you think?
I think a lot of things. I did like the show. They got the aesthetics pretty much down, except for the fact that Moon Knight doesn't have strappy, kind of stitched together looks of things. It doesn't like wrap around him when he gets his Moon Knight suit. It's actually like a physical suit most of the time. You might question it's in his head, but he uses actual suits, at least from the 2006 round that I was reading. But it doesn't wrap around him. He doesn't look like a mummy. I get that they were leaning into the Egyptian thing. There were a lot of there was some kind of social justice-y like messaging and stuff that was done throughout that whole first season.
Well, should we first off say spoilers? Obviously, the show just came out recently. It's only been out for like a month.
That's good.
If you want to watch it, I recommend it. So that being said, we do recommend it. There are caveats, obviously, but we do recommend it. If you want to watch the show without any spoilers, go see it.
Stop now.
Save this video for your watch later list.
Exactly.
Come back to it.
Come back.
But
write a comment that we were right about everything we were saying.
About every single thing we ever said in our life and on this video, we were correct.
Especially this video, but life is also
Come
good.
back and then finish the video with us, but we are going to go completely in depth on this. I'm not going to hold anything back. If it's a spoiler, it's a spoiler. So spoiler warning, be prepared. All right, it's said, it's done.
Yes.
As far as like the obvious changes like they did in the reboot of the comics, they are trying to obviously introduce more progressive stuff and that kind of thing. They want to change the stuff for more quote-unquote modern audiences.
Which I view as poison.
Yes.
Yes.
The things that I thought that was actually really interesting as far as the changes goes, though, I understand why they did the suit difference. Instead of it being a regular suit where he puts it on, it's clothing, it's protective, tactical, that kind of stuff. Instead, it's leaning into a spiritual aspect. It's a blessing and a symbol for him being under the... he's a priest. He's literally considered the high priest of Khonshu. And so it being mummy wrappings around his body that then turns into the Moon Knight costume, I found that kind of interesting. Do I love it more than the suit? It's okay. The fact that this show seems to be really heavily leaning into the Egyptian gods as like their main focus making him kind of a different character. He's not Thor, where he is a god. He's not Doctor Strange, where he's dealt with gods and demons, etc. But it's still a very magic-themed character. But they have their own rules, that kind of thing. The Egyptian gods are like full display when it's happening. So as far as the gods goes, they do lean into them showing, we have these avatars, we have these beings that we choose to have be representatives of us. So they have the god Seth, the god Khonshu, the god of the sun, the god of this,
Osiris,
the god of that, Osiris, yeah. All of these different gods have their own avatars that do their bidding on Earth, and I found it pretty interesting. It was a cool direction to take the character instead of him just being a vigilante. Would I have liked to have seen a brutal, kind of psychotic vigilante Moon Knight as well? Totally. What we did get, though, I did not hate, and I actually really liked the job of Oscar Isaac with him playing the character, being able to switch between the different personalities, which...
he's a great actor.
Yeah, which they do end up incorporating into even the fight styles being different, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's really great. I love his portrayal. I love the portrayal of the main actor. The design, they got it mostly right, I think, on the outfits. I don't like the fact that almost every time, almost every interaction with a female, Mark Spector, the character, is always lower. He's always talked down. He's always treated like garbage, and he takes it. So he's like what you'd call he's a weak man throughout most of it. I mean,
little simpy.
He's a simp. Yeah, he's simpish, and that extends even into the fight scenes. Like Moon Knight has to get saved. Moon Knight has to get rescued. Like almost every big major fight scene, he's in a position where he's like, I can't fight, I can't defend myself. And then, the big strong woman comes in and saves him and stuff. It's like, all right, he's Moon Knight in the books. He's been doing this for like 20 years or something. Maybe not in story.
Yeah, in story, I would say it's probably like a 2-year, maybe 3 years.
5,
less than
7
10
years.
Definitely less than 10.
He's been doing it for a while, and he doesn't rely heavily on the strength of women to save him and to come rescue him.
But I think what they do interesting with that, because obviously it does happen in the show, because you have to show a character be weak at some point to be able to have things happen. But the thing that I think is really interesting is when they're usually showing him being weaker and having to be rescued, it's showing the differences between his personalities. You see Stephen Grant early on. He's the first personality that you meet, and he's a British guy who is very meek, nerdy guy, has no friends, no one respects him, female colleagues, male colleagues, people that just see him every day. They don't even remember his name. They call him like Matt or something. Instead of calling him Mark, whatever, or Steven, and they're like, hey, what's up, Stanley, or whatever. And so you see his weakness in all aspects of his personality, but you do end up being able to see how he interacts with he finds out is actually his wife, or Mark Spector's wife. With him being able to meet her, you can tell that he is able to interact with her, I think, a little bit better. He's a little bit more open. He's able to communicate with her in a more real sense, especially emotionally. And she really appreciates it and starts to kind of really like Steven. Where you then have Mark, who in comparison, Mark is the opposite. He is hardcore, gung-ho. The guy takes people out really quickly, has obviously tons of experience. He's very formidable, but he has horrible interactions with his wife. And his
closed off.
Yeah, he's super closed off, really emotionally unavailable. It's angry, lashes out, lies, holds things back, doesn't tell her about things. And
to protect her.
To protect her, because obviously he's a protector, but because of that, you do see the two personalities kind of clashing and how they're both interacting with the same woman, and you see those personalities showing, this one might be better in this way, this one might be better in that way. So does that happen in the show? For sure. I also think they kind of
I'm talking about the
makes
fight
sense.
scenes as well. I'm talking about like Moon Knight. He's getting stabbed by a bunch of stabs in a bunch of spears in one section, and he's save me! I can't do anything. And then once the lady comes to help him moderately, even just like a little, he's like, I'll take them all down. I can totally do it now because of that. And he gets saved multiple times when they're in wait. Yeah. Again, if you have not watched the show, you should watch the show. If you intend to watch the show, which I would suggest, despite the fact that I hate Disney, I would suggest that you watch it. Or if you're just interested in what we're talking about, I would suggest you watch it. But if you haven't, again, pause this, turn it off, go to the thing, and then come back and then watch the rest. Anyways,
it is worth a watch.
And then
it's definitely worth a watch.
In the end fight scene, he gets saved like 3 times by this chick.
See,
I know she's superpowered, but it's a super.
I don't even see it as much as that because I don't think it's like crazy overt. There's like 2 big moments that I remember in the last fight that was very overt, and I was like, okay. We get it. You're big. You're brave. It's great. Fantastic.
You're a strong woman.
Can we move on?
Strong woman.
Strong woman.
Yeah.
And anyway, you get to see, I think, Mark and Steven in a way that I think is really interesting. Once they start to work together and you get to start to see them, one, they find out about each other, and you find out Mark is aware of this personality and he's been keeping it from him. And Steven has become the dominant personality, and his wife, Mark's wife, has thought that Mark has disappeared. In reality, Steven has taken over and is living in England in his own apartment and everything, and is having like horrible issues with sleepwalking and that kind of stuff. And so he's tied himself to his bedpost in a way that he's not going to go out and lose track of time, wake up and go, why am I in this place? Which does happen in a couple of moments. And he starts to go, what's happening? I'm having another psychotic break. I'm losing it. And then he finds out, I am Steven, and I'm actually part of Mark.
So you see, so you have a few differences between the show and the comics. One of them being some of the costuming is different. Another one being the absence of other characters, which you'll probably see later on in the second season. Other things that you see are different is the characters are actually different personalities than the books. They some of it is close, but they do change the characters quite a bit. I'm not a die-hard Moon Knight fan, so I'm not as crazy about the changes. I'm not reacting as ravenously. I don't hate it as much as I would if I was a pure Moon Knight fan. I know
Moon Knight purist.
Right. So those things are different. Also, the fact that, it's just there's a lot of differences with. There's several differences. I don't think they. Prior to the reboot, prior to 2006, I don't think they ever introduced Stephen Grant as having a British personality.
No, he's always just been like a man about town billionaire who is very much a Bruce Wayne kind of character.
Yeah.
But used in a way to get things for Mark Spector. In that other personality or other alias, he was able to use it to his advantage. Like, I know about these certain people. I know about like this crime syndicate that has a lot of money flowing into it because I know it through my business contacts and that kind of stuff. It's really cool, very interesting. They kind of do the opposite. They kind of make Stephen Grant instead just he's obviously a well-off guy, but he's basically just doing a basic 9 to 5 job working in a museum, and he's a wimp. They tried to make his personality as different from Mark's as possible, in the fact that not only does he identify as a British person, but also he's a guy who doesn't have a brave bone in his body, and he's fully aware of the fact that he's psychologically not okay. And is dealing with, I'm waking up in the middle of the night, I'm waking up in places I've never been, I have to tie myself to a bedpost, and so I can't explain that to a woman, I can't really have relationships with people, and the people that I do have relationships, it's sad, it's bare bones, and there's really no reciprocation of relationship, it's very one-sided.
Yes, one of them, he has no reciprocation at all, in any way.
Yeah.
It's zero reciprocation.
It's really, really sad.
Physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, zero. Literal zero.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's befriended a street performer.
No, not that guy. I'm talking about a different one. There's a couple. I would say that is 1% of a relationship.
Oh, okay.
He has one that is zero.
Yeah, he's friends with a street performer, which is who I thought you were talking about, and it's a man who's all decked out in gold, and it's one of those people who usually have like a and they move around, that kind of thing. Yeah, but they do it to show like they're moving in certain movements, show they're more robotic. And so the guy's just sitting there stiff.
That's a different kind of thing.
Not responding. And then you have Stephen Grant, the personality, sitting there talking to him about his day and whatnot, getting literally nothing back. And the guy doesn't even look at him. And he's just like, all right, well, thanks, mate. This was really fun. All right, I'll talk to you later. And he gives him like money and he takes off.
Steven says these things. Yeah, the guy still is. He probably thinks he's nuts and doesn't want to interact with him. Anyway, so the statue guy. So any scenes that stood out? Any scenes that stood out to you? Or
I thought the first episode was very solid. They definitely try and make you get amped up for the rest of the show by going like, oh, what's happening? The mystery. Oh, you see these. You see him kind of waking up in these random moments, and he's holding a gun. Oh, he wakes up and he's standing over people. Yeah. By the end of the first episode, you see him take on the full suit. He's getting attacked by a magical jackal creature that's chasing him around the museum as Stephen Grant, and then he looks up and sees Mark's reflection, and the reflection starts talking to him, and he's like, hey, looks just like him, and he goes, Stephen, it's Mark. I need you to let me have the body. What are you talking about? Are you crazy? This isn't happening. That thing's coming in the bathroom any minute. It's going to kill me. And he goes, just let me take over. I'll take care of it. You don't have to worry about anything. I'll protect us. All right, fine. He does, and immediately is awoken, becomes Moon Knight. The straps and wrappings go all around his body, cover his face, cover his head, and he becomes Moon Knight. It's a really cool transformation. It's definitely different, but I actually really enjoyed it. And then immediately you just see it pan away from the bathroom and you just hear smash, crash, breaking, taking out this giant monster that's basically an Egyptian werewolf that's attacking him. And by the end, it comes back and pans in. All the mirrors, the stalls, the sinks are all shattered, broken up, and there's debris everywhere. And he's just smashing into the face of this jackal, which I enjoy and appreciate because my introduction to the character is that he's kind of hardcore, so seeing him do that, I was like, all right, let's get into this. Let's not do a Disneyfication of it. Let's do some hardcore Moon Knight stuff.
There will be no cutting off of faces.
There is no cutting off of faces.
Probably.
Clarice. So I'm fine with that, but that's one moment that I really, really enjoyed. What about you?
I think scenes that I really enjoyed. I liked that scene, the intro of Moon Knight as Moon Knight, what he looks like in a full outfit,
full garb.
Another scene I liked was where I think I liked the fight where he's facing down a bunch of guys on horses and stuff, and where he's getting attacked from all different places. Another one that I really liked was the end scene where they showed the Moon Knights, the versions of Moon Knight, Mr. Knight and Moon Knight, switching places and fighting simultaneously. And I think one of the scenes where you finally see the main bad guy of the series staring straight in front. He's standing straight in front of Mark Spector, and they're facing off. And Mark Spector is ready to take on like a whole room of guys with guns and everything else. And and you know how the scene is going to go. You know what's going to happen, but just the interplay between those two characters and the context, the subcontext or whatever, the stuff that they're not saying, that is really interesting to me, and the interactions and thinking about what's going on in the head of the other personality of Moon Knight, what's going on in his head at that time, and I really like those scenes. Yeah, and also the scene where, and one of the last scenes of the show
Yeah.
where Mark and Steven both become one, where they both unite together.
Both personalities become able to inhabit the same body at the same time. There's no real conflict, and they get to do it in the form of how they fight.
Well, I'm saying the one where they're in the afterlife. They're in a space in the afterlife where they both unite, and there's some good effects and everything, and it was something that I was looking for and something that they needed to do in the story, and that was a point that I've been looking for throughout that. So I actually really liked I still like the Mr. Knight look, and I like the general, if you don't get too close to the outfit, the Moon Knight outfit, I like that one. What did you like about the looks of?
Well, I was going to say, the Moon Knight suit itself, when it's Mark Spector being Moon Knight, obviously it does have a slight variation compared to what was in the comics, but I still enjoy it, especially in motion. I think it looks really good. The detail of it being kind of mummy wrapping / cloth and that kind of stuff, it looks a little weird in parts, but I can still kind of like it. Where I think they do fantastic, and it's super comic accurate, is Mr. Knight. The way that they portray him, it's just a dude in a full suit, mask, and glowing eyes because of it being Stephen Grant's personality in a heroic persona. I think that's actually really cool. I found that really, really good. I enjoyed that, and the fact that you get to see him early on when he first takes on that persona. He's very unsure of himself. Even while he's trying to fight, he's like, kind of, and then by the end of it, seeing how he's kind of grown, you see the character of Steven, or the personality of Steven, become a little bit more sure of himself. He's a little more confident. He's able to fight better. He's not pulling his punches. He's not trying to be like, oh, what's going on? I don't know. Instead, he's just like, nope, this is what's got to get done. I'm going to do it. And the suit itself looks virtually true to the comic book art, which I really appreciate. And then once they do get to a certain point, you get to see both in action, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. So they had those concepts. One thing I'm actually really looking forward to in the show is the introduction of the third personality, which you see hints of through the latter part of the I think third episode and beyond.
There's a couple moments where you see Steven or Mark wake up, and neither of them are the persona that was right before that.
Right.
They go, what's happening? What did you do?
Which they introduced in the comics.
Yeah, and he's a little bit more brutal. You see at one point there's 3 dead guys around him, and he's holding a knife into somebody, and he literally lets go, and he's just like, what's going on? And then the other guy goes, what did you do? And he's like, I don't know. I wasn't here 10 minutes ago.
He said, what did you do? Yeah. And so you have that, and you also have the introduction. In a scene, you see each of the personalities, or what each personality is in a different section of a psychiatric facility, in a psychiatric hospital. And the Stephen Grant personality is in a sarcophagus, and he's revealed. He gets taken out. There's also a room which has a third another sarcophagus, which is red, and it's banging around doing the same stuff that Stephen's was, but you'd never see what's in there. And so I am interested. I believe that in the next season, you're going to see the third personality for Mark Spector, for Moon Knight, appear. They also show, they actually do show a third personality.
Ultimately, in an end credit scene, they do show who it is. And it's, I think, Jake Lockley.
But I think you'll see a third Moon Knight, to be specific. Yeah.
Oh, that would be really cool. I would actually be totally into that. I didn't think about that in the moment because I was just like, oh, they're introducing the final third personality. Right. I get it. But if they are introducing Moon Knight versions too, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I think that's what's coming. Also, you do see the billionaire. I believe they hint at the billionaire. Not billionaire. Sorry, they might have made it a billionaire these days, but the millionaire version of Moon Knight of Mark Spector. So his personality. I think they're leading into that, and I think you'll be seeing more of the other avatars of the gods, which they introduced in the first season.
Introduced and killed off a lot of them.
They killed off a lot of them. I think you're going to see a resurgence of those, and I think you might see some more brutality from Moon Knight going into the future. And maybe some crossover with other heroes in the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
And him taking on some of those, borrowing from the 2011 Bendis run of Moon Knight. So that's some of the theories I have.
I think the overall impressions I get from the show is that they obviously really want it to be a more spiritual themed character and a big emphasis on the psychosis of the character. And so he's kind of fighting himself. And so he doesn't really have any nemesis characters. The closest thing to it was a character from this who ends up dying at the end anyway.
So they might introduce the Bushman.
They might introduce Bushman, which could be really brutal, really crazy. I don't really know how far they're going to take it. I kind of doubt it's going to be insanely brutal, just because I doubt that they are going to have the guts to do that.
Uh-huh.
But the idea of another persona coming up, both for the civilian personas and for a Moon Knight persona, could be really, really cool. Like a red Moon Knight suit would be awesome.
That would be interesting. Blood Moon.
Blood Moon. I only come out in Blood Moon.
By the way, I've never seen the third character, the third Moon Knight persona, so I don't even know if they could do a Blood Moon, which would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, it could be awesome. I think that would be really interesting for the future of the show. I think that they're probably going to try and bring him into the fold with the current run of who the Avengers are and that kind of thing, even though I kind of don't have any interest in any of them, except for kind of Winter Soldier, and even then, that's kind of it. Doctor Strange is good. Yeah. And especially since they both have spiritual, magical ties to each other, I think that could be interesting. As far as another run of the show, I'm not really sure what they're going to do except for dealing with the ramifications of another personality coming up. And then the fact that his wife is now another superhero. Or
the fact that they don't even know that Khonshu is still interacting with them. Which, by the way, I saw coming. So I think a second season would be really good.
Yeah. I also think the way that they have everybody interacting with Khonshu and with the other gods is interesting. They kind of don't hold anything back as far as it being nope, it's real, this is happening, these gods exist, and it's just get used to it.
The scene with the changing the times of the night sky, that was also one that really stood out.
Yeah, being able to show the power of Khonshu to show the night sky thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Really, really cool, beautiful imagery. But yeah, kind of makes you go oh, if Mark Spector is able to get stabbed thousands of times, or if he's stabbed with multiple spears and stuff, the dude can literally power through time. What more can he do? Is he even? Oh, you literally see him fly at one point.
Yeah.
If they're going to amp up his abilities, they show him at night when the moon is in full moon and he's flying around New York, picking people up like giant white-robed Superman, it's going to be nuts. But I kind of doubt they're going to take it that far. I think it was mostly for a tool to be able to let the story progress, but who knows. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought the end of the show was interesting. Like I said, I do recommend it. I think somebody should give it a watch. It's very short, breeze through it. It's 3 MCU movies long. It's 6 hours. You could finish it over a weekend, honestly. If you've been sitting on it, I would say try it out. See if you like it.
Yeah, and the character from the outset that I've always thought has been worth them exploring cinematically for a while now. He's just very good, interesting character, cool aesthetics, cool abilities, and cool attributes for the character, and a lot of story potential, a lot of ways you could go, and that don't exactly tie in with the rest of the Marvel EU, which is, I think, a plus. So I would also recommend it.
Totally. And the character himself, even in the comics, he's always been, ironically, kind of the black sheep of all the other characters. Most of the Avengers ignore him. Spider-Man even kind of thinks he's just a nut job who runs around in a moon suit. There's very few street level characters who really respect him, or know that he's like someone formidable and worth kind of keeping an eye out for. But most people kind of just ignore him outright. Like they're just like, we didn't invite you to the party, Moon Knight. You didn't have to show up. Okay, just because there was somebody screaming doesn't mean you gotta come over. Which kind of gives him even an underdog quality compared to other superheroes. So he's an underdog amongst underdogs, which is interesting. And then you have all of his like personality defects and personality multiplication also. So it's a very interesting character. I would highly recommend reading pretty much all of the books. You could even dip into some of the older stuff from like the 70s and whatnot, really get a feel for who the character was, and then after the reboot in 2006, who the character is, and then the fact that they're going to probably be putting a big lean onto the character now that he's going to be in the MCU.
Just watch out for the SJW stuff.
Yeah, that goes without saying. But honestly, I would say like pick up some comics on it. You can't go wrong. Early 2000s stuff, really solid, really interesting.
They're going to cost more.
They're going to cost more, but I think it's totally worth it. Or you could do what I did at the time and check out stuff from your library. Like don't sleep on your local library. It is there for a reason. Right. Use it. It's awesome.
That's right.
Like, I know it sounds weird because everybody's like, oh, I'll just get it digitally. You can't beat having a physical book in your hands, being able to just flip through it and check it out. It is fantastic.
Yeah.
If I was to make recommendations, if I could, about stuff that's going to be of similar tone, we've been talking a lot about how Moon Knight is kind of Marvel's Batman. If you want to read something that's also DC that I would really recommend, check out the Animal Man run from the 2000, I believe it's 2013. Fantastic, really, really interesting. We're not like sponsored by him or something. It's just legitimately fantastic run, and it feels very much in tone with the Moon Knight stories as well. About a very human person who's dealing with really crazy, eccentric stuff happening to him, and how the ramifications are very real. So I would highly recommend that if you want something similar. And then, any other thoughts on the character?
He's the grittier, more violent, more broken, more complex version of Batman. Even though I do really like Batman. But yeah, I would ditto. I recommend all the previous stuff. Not really much more. I wish they wouldn't ruin things with the SJW messaging and with their ideology and stuff. And I wish they would leave characters alone and try to use their brains to think of ways to use characters how maybe they were meant to be used. That don't trash everything. But even with some of the breaking, some gems can come out of that. You know, if they break the stone, sometimes there's a gem inside that they can use. So that's
fantastic. There's going to be a couple turds in the sandwich, but the sandwich overall is still ultimately good. As terrible as that is,
I would not call it turds, but I think that there's a lot of potential, and it could be really exciting, so I hope you like that. And if you liked this video, if you liked our analysis, our synopsis, if you liked how it went, we encourage you to check out more videos. There's another one I did that my brother and I did on Spider-Man and alternate versions of him. And we also will show up on other channels and stuff. We'll talk about stuff, but this channel, again, we'll talk about geeky subjects and and nerdy things. We'll talk about theories, histories, and if you disagree with anything we said, if you like anything we said, or if you have any suggestions for future videos,
put it in the comments.
Leave it in the comments.
Keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
If you guys watched the show,
Yeah.
you didn't like it, you thought it was garbage, let us know.
Please
tell us why.
Please tell us in great detail. Many comments of how you hated the show and the video.
If you loved it and you were like, oh man, I want to have this playing continuously on a loop, especially while I'm like trying to sleep, like whatever. Tell us all of this. It's great.
Anyways, yeah. And anyways, so you can check out his channel, The Wilhelm Scream.
The Wilhelm Scream.
On YouTube, and you can also check him out on Twitter.
At Wilhelm Scream 8. It's like an infinity symbol. You understand?
Yeah. And then you also have my channel, Cranberry Landers, with me. And you can also check me out on Twitter as well. I'll post things about this video and other videos coming up in the future, and just random rants and stuff. So
be sure to like, comment, send us as much
subscribe,
hate
share,
mail, love mail as you can.
Check him out.
Hit the notification bell if you want to find out when we do post stuff, especially him. And yeah, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. All right, see you later. Adios. God bless. Bye.